Good morning, everyone. I have my cup of coffee today. I somehow needed my cup of coffee today because I've been thinking about this one poem, which I feel, and I'm sure you will agree, is perhaps the toughest in this collection. And I wanted to present it to you in such a way that your understanding could be facilitated and your response to it also would be thus would be more in tune with what is expected, right? Hence, since morning I've been thinking about it, not more than morning, the last 24 hours I've been thinking about it, how best to present it for you all. um, and so the hot cup of coffee. Before that, this is where I'm going to take you. Can you see this? All right, let's check. Where are we? Can you see this? Yes, the Strait of Dover, English Channel, and you know the strait, all of you good geography students, the narrow part where the two of the adjoining countries come the closest. So you have the Dover on the English side and Calais on the French side. Yes, that is the Strait of Dover. Yes, so you can actually, on a clear day, you can see the lights across. Of course, got an idea? This is where we are going to go. A long journey, a long trip. Uh, that's why probably the cup of coffee makes sense, right? Now, Mathew Arnold, a Victorian poet, uh, as is given in your text, you need your text today for sure. Uh, he was in Dover to spend his honeymoon. That's a general belief. With his newly wed wife, Frances Lucy Whitman, around about 1867 when it was published, so 1961 to 67, more or less, during that period of time. Mm, and it's a dramatic monologue. He's speaking to his wife. She's there. She doesn't speak at all. But all his thoughts and emotions, very typical of a Victorian poet, the Mathew Arnold was, has been um, dramatically etched in this poem. You know, Victorian, we talk of the three Victorians, Alfred Tennyson, Robert Browning, and Mathew Arnold. Mathew Arnold was a critic as well. He was a social critic. He was staunchly religious, and there are different facets of it that you'll find revealed in this poem. Yes, so I would like you to before of course I start. Let me uh, give you a brief background. You need to understand the background to understand the different layers. This probably, if you look at the poem, you will mark it, it's a very uneven distribution. You have the very long first stanza, it's about 14 lines, and then you have the next 20 lines, a short little stanza, and then you have 15 to 20, that's 1 to 14 is your first, 15 to 20, 6 lines is your second stanza, 8 lines is your third, uh, and then again you have, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 lines is your the last stanza. So it's a very uneven designing. Uh, Probably, as it is mentioned by critics, it's the first example of what you call the modern free verse, full of imagery, full of metaphors, replete with so many allusions, but definitely the first modern free world. Now, what does Mathew Arnold? What does he do here? He sets a scene uh, during his honeymoon. He's setting a scene for us, and the most dominant image here is the image of the sea, right? and it is a moment which is steeped in tranquility. It's a moment of love and joy, because a man is addressing his beloved on his honeymoon, right? So that is the thought that one would expect, right? But to understand Dover Beach, it is very important for us to understand the intellectual and the social currents of the Victorian age. Now, what was happening at that time to England? Because Arnold responded to it not with his head but with his heart. Yes. So let's go to the background. The Industrial Revolution was affecting the social fabric of that time. Yes, you had an economy which was very rural, agrarian economy, and that was changing and moving towards a more industrial economy. And people were moving from the rural towns into the cities, where industries were being set up, mills were being set up. So it was a very painful transition that was taking place. So what happens? What is the usual fallout of a transition? A social crisis. There was depression, there was unemployment, there was a lot of migrant laborers moving, but there was no surety of the kind of work that was going to going to be offered. What was meant for them? They were unsure as to what the new life was unfolding. So this urban industrialization was a huge challenge for any country it is, and at that point in time for England it was, right? And now, amidst all this chaos that was happening, there was something uh, like, even if I ask you, amidst all this chaos that is happening, what is that one thing that remains constant? Uh, we all might say family values. I'm talking of what's happening now in our world. Family values. Some might say faith. Yes. uh, at that point in time, when there was this kind of um, a surreal world that was being created, the stabilizing force was religion. Okay, so definitely, why? Because religion offered the answers to our existence. If there were questions asked, religion gave us the answers. So you see, technology, the growth of technology that led to industrialization, yes, was born out of scientific discoveries, yes. So these then challenged what? It challenged our fundamental faith, belief, our assumptions that we have grown up with at that point in time in England. That was what was happening. Now, Mathew Arnold, remember, was a social critic. He realized that the old values, the religious values, I'm not talking just of social the family values, I'm talking of religious values, would not be able to bear the onslaught of the new ideas. But we could not do away with them. Yes. So just an argument, or having a defense, a revolutionary defense about this religion, was also not possible. And while I was reading this, I found that in his poem, the scholar Gypsy, um, he himself has stated that he was caught in, and I quote, this strange disease of modern life. He calls it the strange disease of modern life. So, scientific discoveries made religious faith impossible. But, but Matthew Arnold was desiring the kind of security and certainty that the faith that he has always enjoyed since childhood. He wanted it, right? But he didn't know how to get it, and he knew that it was being challenged. So this is the juncture, perhaps a dark moment of his life, mm, all the thoughts that were being, that were sort of trying to trying to come out with so much of force, where all values were dissolving into absolutely a meaningless mass of conflicting emotions, chaos. Dover Beach was created. So a moment of joy brings about a moment of extreme darkness and bitterness. Yes. So uh, I hope you've understood. It is you need to understand the backdrop, and I thought it's important. So we're talking about the mid 1800s, right? Um, the pillar of faith, religion, is crumbling. Yes, and you know, at that point in time, we had the English physician Erasmus Darwin, that is the grandfather of Charles Darwin. You know, he was the first, if you don't know, he was the first who wrote the poem The Temple of Nature, where he has spoken about this evolutionary concept of how man has evolved, which Charles Darwin later took out. So you did have Erasmus Darwin's poem, which spoke about the evolutionary concept of how man has evolved from apes, right? And also you had the French naturalist Lamarck, who's also talking about how from the beast man has evolved. So, I mean, what was it questioning? What was science questioning? It is not the Garden of Eden and there was a bright light and man was created and there was Adam and Eve and there was this tree of knowledge and the serpent and the apple. No, we have evolved. So science is challenging religion. That is what was happening at that time when Mathew Arnold found all his this entire citadel of faith crumbling. So existence of God, everything was doubted, yes. But he was religious. He was deeply religious and he could not let it go. Arnold could not let it go. So he lamented this dying of this faith, yes. And if I move from this, lamented the dying of this faith, the light of faith, which is symbolized by the light he sees in Dover Beach on the coast of France. And at this juncture, I would like to move to the poem. So, request you to get your text. Yes. Please mark the lines. It's extremely important for you to mark the lines. Yes. 1 to 14. Please mark it while I take a sip of my coffee. 1 to 14, first stanza. 15 to 20. Then 21 to 28 and 29 to 37. Have you got it? Super. Right. Now, so the light, what I was talking about is the light of faith. So I'm moving from the reflective to the literal. The light of faith that was gradually ebbing, which was disappearing, dying, was like the light that he sees on the coast of France, which at times appears and at times it's gone, on and off. That is the state of the light of faith also in our lives. And it's very natural that from a distance, I saw you, I showed you the geography of that English channel, the Strait of Dover. So a sudden cloud, a wind, the light will vanish and suddenly it comes back. So it's a state of flux. And that was what the state of everyone was during that time, and more so Mathew Arnold, yes, because he was a believer in God and religion. Yes, he you know, uh, that brings me back to a very important quote. I thought I should share this quote with you. You know, he wrote a lot of religious treatises, and in one called God and the Bible, he wrote this wonderful line that at the present moment, two things about the Christian religion must surely be clear to anybody who has eyes in his head. And he says, one is that men cannot do without it, and the other that they cannot do with it as it is. So you see, what is he saying? He's saying that we cannot do without religion, but we cannot do with religion as it is. So we need a transformation. There has to be a change. We have to see a new dimension in our which is going to encompass our faith and religion, right? So what are we beginning our poem with? We are beginning our poem with this extreme dilemma that man is at this juncture of civilization. Yes. Right? Sure? All right. So let's read the opening stanza. The sea is calm tonight. The tide is full. The moon lies fair upon the straits. On the French coast, the light gleams and is gone. The cliffs of England stand glimmering and vast out in the tranquil bay. Come to the window, sweet is the night air. Only from the long line of spray where the sea meets the moon-blanched land, listen, you hear the grating roar of pebbles which the waves draw back and fling at their return up the high strand, begin and cease and then again begin with tremulous cadence slow and bring the eternal note of sadness in. The eternal note of sadness in. So what is happening in the first stanza? It's very clear. The first stanza, we have this the speaker, who is Mathew Arnold, his initial experience, yes, which shifts from calmness to a kind of uncertainty. And in the beginning, there is calmness, there is tranquility. But then, with the sound of the moving pebbles, yes, uncertainty and disquiet has stepped in. Yes. Did you realize that? Yes. Okay. So, you see, when we begin the poem, as you say, the opening visual images, very tranquil. You have the calm sea, right? You have the glimmering cliffs shining, bathed in moonlight. You have the tranquil bay. It's low tide. Yes. So the bay is tranquil. Nobody is on the shore, and the night air is sweet. So all the images of absolute tranquility and loveliness. And then come till the sixth line. You got it? Seventh line, you have the word only. Only. Something has broken this tranquility. It's in contrast. Yes? Only. Yes. Come to the window, he says, calling his wife. Come to the window. Only from the long line of spray where the sea meets the moon-blanched land, listen, you hear the grating roar. Yes? The contrast. Yes. You come to the window, but then you will see a contrast. Yes. So unlike the reassuring scene that you feel around, the contrast is in the sound. So the visual images are calm, the auditory images are unquiet. There's a sense of disquiet there. It's uneasy. So visual calm, auditory uneasy. Got it? The shift. Yes. What do you see? The roar. Now you see I'm using words of sense quite different from the calm sea, the cool night air. Yes. And there's a roar because you hear the grating roar, the harsh, the pebbles are being moved towards the beach and they hit the shore. And when they move back, they're hitting the other pebbles that are on the beach. So there is a din, there is a uneasy quiet. Yes, the sound and the what is happening, begin and ceasing, the constant flow of the pebbles as they move up and down, with tremulous cadence, slow and bring. So this entire movement up and down, as all through the night, the sound of the surf, what is it bringing in? The eternal note of sadness. Why should sadness be eternal? Why? Yes. When the visual imagery is one of such pleasantries, why is it that the sound that we hear is is so full of sadness? It's it's something very ominous, isn't it? Very ominous, and uh, this perhaps represents Arnold's recognition that however sweet the night air is, however calm the sea is, however the light of the moon is quietly shining on the shore, yes, the center of human experience, what man is at this juncture of our civilization, that juncture, unfortunately, is steeped with uncertainty and sadness. That is at the core of human understanding, human relationship, human presence on this earth. Our own, not just presence. No, I won't call it presence. I would call it our existence. So our existence is steeped in sadness. So everything around is calm, quiet, silent, right? So when we move from the eternal note of sadness, you see how the sadness is recognized, because if you see the next stanza, Sophocles long ago, lines 15 to 20, Sophocles long ago heard it on the Aegean, and it brought into his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. We find also in the sound a thought, hearing it by this distant northern sea. So you see, the sadness is eternal because he's bringing in and bringing in the Greek tragedian Sophocles into his poem. And he says that Sophocles must have heard the same note of sadness 2000 years ago when he stood by the Aegean Sea. Because even he was standing at a juncture of history where things were changing, right? He could even Sophocles could bring to his mind what? The turbid ebb and flow of human misery. Even he would experience the entire change that was taking place in human psyche at that point in time. You know, Sophocles' greatest and best known tragedy was Oedipus Rex, yes? And Oedipus Rex ends with the chorus pointing out that no man could count himself as happy until at the moment of death he can look back into life and without pain. So fate fate has afflicted Oedipus with a sin of the highest kind. You know about the incest, right? So fate has afflicted Oedipus with that pain, yes, and which is a guarantee of guilt forever, yes, right, forever. So fate is also dictating our lives to such an extent that it guarantees discontent and it defines this eternal note of sadness which Arnold hears here, like Sophocles heard when he stood beside the Aegean. The same sound of sadness is what he hears when he stands by this distant northern sea, the northern sea being the English Channel. Right. So the role of fate, the role of our destiny, that is leading us to question the pain in our life. And like the chorus in Oedipus says, we cannot call ourselves happy because we cannot look back in a life without pain. That does not happen. So, sadness is eternal, and this note of sadness is what is reflected in this entire image here. Have you understood it till now? Yes. So, the tragedy of Sophocles, the Greek tragedian of the 5th century of Athens, the same sadness and misery is reflected, it is perennial, it is universal, and that extends over centuries. Not just extends over centuries, it extends over immense geographical area from the Aegean to the English Channel. That's how far it extends. This confusion, this restriction, this entire pain of our existence. So, uh, at this juncture, I hope you have understood till here, because I honestly would like you to revise this entire section before I move on to the next and conclude the discussion on Dover Beach. Yes, it's it's very deep, but it is one of the most marvelous piece of poetry that you will ever come across. So please, guys, enjoy it, love it like I do. I hope my love for this poem has reached you all. I hope it has. Take care, stay safe. See you till tomorrow.